Story time about how my stepdad caught me sending nudes to my stepbrother. Disclaimers not my story time on Instagram. Now, my mom is dating my crush's dad. They made us spend the weekends together. Remember, at this point, I'm trying not to show that I'm actually in love with this guy. But now our parents are forcing us to hang out. Everything moved really fast with them. They got engaged 2 months later and then married 3 months later. So now my crush was my stepbrother. Oh yeah, and my best friend hated me for it. My mom and I ended up moving into their house. So now I saw him every single day. Can you imagine having to live with your crush? Like him seeing everything about your life? I was constantly embarrassed. And my best friend started making up rumors about me. He started claiming that I was the one with the ED. But after we moved in together, things changed. Started being very sweet to me. Stopped fighting it, and we kissed. Everything was leading up to us doing the dirty. We were both sending each other nudes, and on one occasion, my stepdad caught me. I decided to tell him the truth. My stepbrother and I begged our parents to let us be together. Eventually, they agreed. We're both 18 now, and we're engaged. We're getting married next summer. True love is true love. My boyfriend's body odor is so bad that I'm considering breaking up with him. Am I the asshole? His pee-pee smells really bad. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 6 months now. The thing is, he's actually really good looking and he's hot. He's actually got an amazing body. He's an athlete. A few months into us dating, I started noticing that he was smelling a little funky. Especially when I tried to go down there, if you know what I mean. So I just never offered. Then I started noticing that he smelled really bad after every single practice. I'm the type of person that will always tell somebody if they have something in their teeth, or if there's something on your face, I'm gonna let you know. So one day I told him that he kind of stank and that he needed to take a shower. That's when he told me that his coach and his entire team are very superstitious and that they can only shower twice a week. Otherwise, they risk losing the entire season. This means I have to put up with him stinking all the time. Every time I go to kiss him, something stinks. So I basically stopped touching him. And this is making him really angry. I mean, am I a bad girlfriend? Go to part 2.
Story time. A girl named Akira Kendrick sent me this story, and the background of it is that her dad was very abusive to her mother, and her mother got custody of Akira, and her dad was not happy about that. Anyway, so Akira was with her aunt and her cousins at her grandmother's house, all on her mother's side, and her dad stops by to say hello. And Akira's outside playing with her cousin, and her dad comes up to her and grabs her arm and says, "Do you want to go to Walmart with me?" And at the time, she's only 7, so all she hears is toy aisle, so she says, "Yes, let's go." So they get in the car, they head to Walmart, she gets some really nice pom-poms, and then he says, "Okay, let's go back to your grandmother's house." So he starts driving and he gets on the highway, and Akira knows that her grandmother's house is right around the corner from Walmart, so he does not need to get on the highway. So she says, "Dad, where are we going?" And he gets really mad and says, "Shut up, sit down, it does not matter." So Akira's in the back seat, she's really scared, and she just shuts her mouth. So after being in the car for a while, they eventually arrived at this really old, abandoned, beat up house. And when they walk in, Akira sees about 25 people, and she does not know any of them. Her dad brings her to a room, puts her in a little closet, throws her some toys and her pom-poms, and says, "Play." Part 2 is coming.
I've always had a good relationship with my mother-in-law up until I was pregnant. My husband's side of the family hasn't had a girl born in the past 100 years. So when everyone found out I was pregnant with a girl, no one believed me. Everyone was so shocked when it was announced that most of them denied it up until the moment she was born. And that's when the horrible comments started. Whenever my husband wasn't around, my mother-in-law would make snarky comments like, "I wonder where she got that nose. It's definitely not my son's." I never told him and let everything slide because she's older and she's my mother-in-law. But when I was pregnant with baby number 2, and yes, it was another girl, I told him to wait as long as possible because I know she wouldn't like the news. When she found out it was a girl, she started sobbing and screaming. She was calling me a whore and demanded that I get out of her house. "Those girls are not ours. She's a whore, a slut. My son did not make those girls." She looked at me and said, "I let you get away with it the first time. I took you in as family. I allowed my son to believe he fathered that brat, but I will not allow it again." My husband was yelling at his mom, and I got up and took my daughter and I ran to the car sobbing.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid. And I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
This is why you should always lock your front doors. A kid living with both of his parents decided to watch a movie for their family weekly movie night. He then gets up to use the restroom. As he is in the restroom, he sees all of the power in the house cuts off, and then he hears 2 loud thumps. He locks the bathroom door and hears heavy objects being dragged across the hallway. The kid, freaking out, runs out of the bathroom and runs into the restroom. Once he is inside the room, he locks the door. As he locks the door, he jumps in bed and acts like he's asleep in hopes that this person who is in the house will ignore a child sleeping. He closes his eyes and hears the door creak at the same time. He squints his eyes and sees a man with no eyes dragging the bodies of both of his parents. The man dragging his parents sits his mom's dead body in a chair facing him, and then sets the dad's body on the floor facing up. It was almost like whoever was in the house who killed them wanted him to see it. He then sees the man writing something on the wall and then climbs under his bed. He laid there for hours knowing that if he moved a muscle he would end up just like his parents. He finally built up enough courage to read the wall, and the writing on the wall said, "I know you're awake."
My wife is dead. The best Christmas gift I could have gotten. At the beginning of 2022, I caught my wife having an affair with one of her exes. Our marriage wasn't perfect. I was not the perfect husband, I will admit, but I did my best. I put effort into the entire 5 years we were together. I put my all into the relationship. Her, I could not say the same. I was forced to confront the reality of who she truly was shortly after I caught her. She illegally evicted me from our shared home, lied to the police to try and get me arrested, tried to get me fired from my job, and tried to turn all of my friends against me. Some of these succeeded while others did not. She made my life a living hell since the day I asked her for the divorce and has planted her heels into the ground over our separation to try and drain all of my finances and emotional strength from me. The only upside is that we have no kids for her to use as weapons, but I soon found out that her policy of strict birth control with me did not extend to her suitor as he got her pregnant 5 months ago. I thought maybe this would help speed along the divorce, but it only railed her in efforts to destroy me. On Christmas Eve, my wife and her suitor went to a party where both
Story time about the girl who tried to scam me. I had a friend refer a homegirl to me. It turns out this homegirl had 500,000 followers on Instagram. I had just started doing TikTok videos and I was super excited to get the exposure from doing her nails. I told her to send me an inspo pic and she sent me this really hard V-cut Halloween set. Practiced for a week straight. I wanted them to be perfect. I was hoping she'd post them online and maybe introduce me to some new clients. So she arrives at her appointment on time, we get started on her set, and I take my time with the details. I finish up as quickly as possible and she loves it. I was so excited and she tipped me an extra $40. She wanted to rebook with me ASAP. Thought it was kind of weird she wanted to rebook with me so soon, but I went ahead and rebooked her. At night, she posts a picture of my nails on Instagram. She's talking about how cute they are and she tags my name. Of course, I like the photo and I comment thank you, but next thing I know, I'm gaining way more followers on my Instagram. I take note that I need to give her a discount at her next appointment. But y'all, the next day, I get another tag on Instagram. She had posted her nails again, but this time she was missing 3 on each finger. This is what her caption said. "Hey Luna, my nails are falling off. What would you like to do about this? I'd like a refund or a full set." I was shocked, and it had 1,000 comments.
Have you heard the terrifying story of what happened to a woman called Midnight Mary? On October 15th of 1872, a 48-year-old woman named Mary Hart unexpectedly collapsed in her home. She had this unknown illness, and she died exactly 12 hours later at midnight. She was then buried in the city's Evergreen Cemetery, and the next night, her aunt had a vivid dream that Mary had been buried alive. Now, her aunt was so sure that her dream was right and was telling her that something was wrong. So she had Mary's coffin dug up and reopened. To their horror, they saw fingernail scratches all along the inside of the coffin from Mary trying to scratch her way out. Now, this is a legend, and people aren't sure if this is exactly true or not, but unfortunately, people were actually buried alive really often back then, and people say that she wanders around the cemetery at night, and if someone visits her grave at midnight specifically, they will be doomed to a horrible death. Now, her gravestone actually reads, "The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away," which is really spooky. And Evergreen is still an operating cemetery and people are discouraged from walking around there in the dark. So yeah, be warned about Midnight Mary.
Story time about the client who tried to take my man. So I invited a client over to my home to get her nails done, and at the time I had a boyfriend who was really encouraging and supportive of my nail business. I've serviced this client before, so I was comfortable enough to bring her around my man. I talked about him all the time, and I showed her pictures, and she was very happy for us. She even called us couple goals. Before I confirmed her appointment, I let her know that he would be home from work that day, and she said she was excited to meet him. On the day of her appointment, she texts me and tells me she's outside. I answered her door, and she's there in short shorts and a crop top. Initially, I didn't think anything of it because it's hot outside, but later I realized that was the first red flag. She comes in and we get started on her set. About 45 minutes later, my boyfriend comes out to get a water bottle. I introduce them to each other, and my client pulls her hand away, stands up, and gives him a hug. I make eye contact with my boyfriend and I raise an eyebrow. She turns around and asks me if she can also have a water bottle, and before I can say yes, she follows him to the kitchen, leans over the counter, and waits for him to hand her one. He gives her one, she smiles at him, and then she walks slowly back to her seat. There's so many things going through my mind. Am I just saying things? Am I being jealous? Am I overthinking? As I'm caught up in my own thoughts, I continue her sex silently. She sits there and chats it up with my man, asking where he works, how much money he makes.